Okay, so I'm going to talk about my studio and the space and some of the things I did to make this work well for me as a studio, as well as my lighting. And so I'll be leaving this studio. I'm moving into another studio. And I think it's interesting just to document and each place I've worked. It's kind of interesting to look back on. And so this studio is an east light studio. So this window faces east, and that's really second best to north light. And the reason for that is north light is the most consistent, so that you don't have direct sunlight. So right now it's very nice light, but it's indirect. If it were, early morning with an east window, I would have direct sunlight coming in, and I wouldn't be able to paint. And so what I had to do was, I have to wait till around noon typically until I can begin working. And so both north and east are they're both very good light. The only difference is that with an east light, you have a shorter time frame to work in. And so like in the winter, I only had from, noon till about 4, which is a short window to paint. Okay, and so one thing that's interesting is that in almost all of my work, I worked with the light coming from left to right. And in the studio, to make it work, I had to switch from right to left. And the reason for that is, so I have a lot of tree cover on that side, and then all the direct, sky is on that side coming in this way. And if I were to reverse the setup, it would just be too dim and not, the dramatic light that I want. And so it was a switch I really didn't want to make. I really prefer a left to right lighting. And there's a few reasons for that. One is that I think a left to right lighting is just more compositionally, it's more pleasing. And another thing is that to me it's more natural in the sense that, so as a right-handed painter, the tendency of course is to make your brush strokes from left to right rather than pushing. And so, and of course it's natural to really work from your, to make a light and then to continue on and work towards the shadow as the light trickles off. And so it's like not so natural to go this way towards the shadow, if that makes sense. As a right-handed painter, that was just one thing that was an adjustment. And so anyhow, I'll talk about some of the studio. Okay, so to talk some more about my lighting. So so all the studios have had white walls, which is really not ideal. You want, for light and shadow painting, you want shadow, and so with white walls you get a lot of reflected light. But I've been able to make it work in each studio I've had, and what I've had to do is, of course you can always paint the walls, but what I've done instead was put up different baffles and curtains, etc., to control reflected light. So like in some studios I've had, so you get a lot of reflected light from the ceiling. And so one thing I've done in the past was put like an awning that comes out, and that just keeps light from bouncing from your ceiling back into your setup. And so another thing I've done is these curtains. So these I've put up, and they separate. On the other side of that is my kitchen, but so they separate that, and they also provide a baffle that stops a lot of the reflected light coming back into my setups, and that's very important to get the light and shadow that I want. And so these are things that you just have to be conscious of to control the light. And so I'll turn some lights on and show you the rest of my studio. Okay, so this is the rest of the studio and some of my work. And this one in the middle is not mine, but was a painting that I restored by Pushman. And then my work on either side. Some of the things things I collect. And some of my music. And then this is a drawing by my teacher, Sherry, which I want to get framed at some point. And then one I did of Samson. Okay, and so then some more work here that's just about finished. And then these are some of my supports that I paint on. So this is all mostly stretched linen and some board. So I stretch all of this linen myself. I buy raw linen, and then it gets around 4 coats of lead and 2 coats of rabbit skin glue, and then I stretch it, and when it's finished, it almost has like kind of like the look and feel of leather. It's very smooth and very thick. And so I stretch it on this support here, which is a 6x4. And so I'll stretch it all at once. It's a lot of labor. I do it maybe twice a year, and then I have the linen. Once I stretch it on this, I take it off, and then I cut it to size. Another of Samson. And one of Jenny. And so this is the space that I've worked in. It's certainly the nicest studio I've had. And I just ended up working too much and not having enough time to paint, so in the place that I'm going, it's much smaller. But I'll be able to paint more and work a little bit less. Hopefully. Anyhow, that's my space.